My name is Roshane Zafar, and I'm the founder and managing director of KASHF Foundation, which is a microfinance organization based out of Pakistan. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here as well. So our focus is on, when we talk about gender and we talk about the economic empowerment of women, our focus is to invest in the value chain of women's entrepreneurship. And when you look at this definition, you assume this is all about changing their financial standing, helping them run businesses, enhancing their capacity, providing them access to financial services. But that's not the whole piece of the pie. In fact, that's just one piece of the story. We also look a lot at enhancing women's agency, their decision-making, and their capacity within the family. So in addition to the economic side or the financial side, we also invest on the social side and the social transformation piece. So when we talk about microfinance or when we talk about our strategy, it's not a transaction. It's not a financial transaction. It is a transformational change that we measure. So to enable that, we look at both the investment in providing loans and insurance services and other financial products, in addition to providing capacity building, social advocacy opportunities to women and their families. So that's how we view the entire model. So if I go back into the history of how we designed this, I'm a development economist by training, and I met Dr. Yunus by chance at a conference. And that inspired me to go and learn about the Grameen Bank and about microfinance. And one of the things Dr. Yunus said to me at the outset, he said, designing financial products is not rocket science. That's the easy part, because others have done it, and it's you replicate it and you can tweak it and you can apply it in the context of your own country. But the real aspect when you work with women, the challenge you're going to face is about changing mindsets. And that is what you will have to spend more of your time on. So what began to happen is when we put on the gender lens to design financial products for women, we looked at their needs, we looked at the demands, we looked at their challenges. One of the biggest challenges that came out was the social context that they work in. So for example, you give a woman a loan. What happens then? Does she use it herself, or does the husband use it? If she earns income, who has control over the income? So these were the questions that we asked ourselves at the outset. So the first thing we did was we began with the traditional solidarity lending, group lending methodology. The idea was women get together, they support each other, they collaborate, they corroborate each other's capacities, and they stand up for each other. That worked in the first 10 years of the organization, because the associative strength that came out of that became the power of intermediation for them. But later on, we realized that women were entrepreneurs in their own right, and they were unique, and they needed services that met their unique needs. So then we moved into individual lending, but in addition to that, we added other programs, the question that you had. We added leadership trainings for women to help them enhance their own self-esteem and self-confidence. We added financial education for women because that was very important. We wanted to make sure that any financial decision they took, they were aware of their responsibilities, and they were aware of what the organization was offering them. So the transparency in the relationship needed to be maintained. Plus, they needed to know about debt management, about savings. So we did those trainings. But even those were not enough. We needed to prepare women to succeed. So then we added business development services going forward. Over time, a lot of the things we do in the programs that we develop are based on evidence and data. So over time, when we started looking at the impact of our programs, we realized that health was a major concern for women. Poverty is a very complex issue. So is gender equity. So when you combine them, you really need to unravel and the vectors in terms of where your intervention, and it's using Pareto's principle, where would the biggest bang for the buck be? So we realized that healthcare was elemental to women. We introduced maternal health trainings for them so that they could make better choices. But we realized it wasn't enough to talk to the women. We needed to engage with the men as well on this topic. So we do trainings for men as well and the mother-in-laws. Because in our social context, the mother-in-law a lot of times makes the decision. So the value chain for investing in women requires going beyond the economy and looking at society as a whole as well. So for one, this is a question people often ask me, how do you select your partners that you work with? So I think the fact that the fund has a clear gender focus aligns us very well. So that was the first starting point for us. And then looking at, of course, scale. So one of the things I often say, small is good, small is beautiful, but scale matters when you're actually addressing women's issues. And to achieve scale, you have to be sustainable, you have to be impactful, and you have to be financially savvy. So it's a combination of social transformation with financial decision making. Similarly, the same applies to any organization that is targeting women. So if I go back in history, and I'll answer your question in just one second, when we established KASHF, we were the first microfinance entity in the country, the first specialized microfinance institution, plus we were targeting women. So we had a dual burden. One side, we needed to demonstrate that an organization investing in women's livelihoods could succeed and go up to scale. And at the other level, we needed to show that it was smart economics to invest in women. So we had to be sustainable. And in 2003, we were the first sustainable organization in Pakistan that was specialized and that was targeting women, which was a huge benchmark. So keeping that in view, when we look at funds and the work that we do with the fund in this case, it allows us to scale up. When we first started working with international investors, we were around 550,000 clients. Today, we are over 1 million women clients. So scale matters because the need for gender equity and the need for financial inclusion for women is a huge challenge anywhere in the world, especially in countries like Pakistan. So as you know, gender equity and the matrix that go with it and the economic empowerment of women is in KASHF's DNA. This is something, that's the raison d'etre of who we are. We have to, anything that we do, it's done with the gender lens and it's done with the gender impact. But the gender framework and the gender action planning that we did allowed us to look at it holistically, starting from the top and going down to the bottom. So what do I mean by that? Starting from looking at governance. So currently at our board level, 70% of our board members are women. And we are very proud of that. And these are very powerful, impactful women leaders in Pakistan who carry voice and who carry agency and who carry impact. So they are the ones that are the upholders of the mission and the vision. If we come to the management tier again, almost 55% of KASHF staff report into a women manager. So again, that tells you the dynamic that whatever we are doing at the top tier, we are replicating it and cascading it downwards. If you look at KASHF's staff, this is, often people marvel at this. How come 50% of your staff are women and 50% are men? Because when I first went to Bangladesh, and I'll share this story with you as well, I was a bit taken aback because when I entered any microfinance organization's branch, all the staff were men while all the clients were women. And I saw a degree of paternalism emerging as a result of that relationship, which I wanted to counter in the context of KASHF. So when I came back, originally, for 5 years, we were an all-women's organization. Our mantra was microfinance for women, by women. And then we realized that we were also being discriminatory. And we were actually excluding men from employment. So then we changed that, but what the measure we took was that any branch that we set up anywhere in the country must have 50% gender representation. And people said this is not going to work, not in the northwestern part of the country, not in the southern belt, which is more conservative. Well, I'm happy to share with you that once you say no to something and you push it back, things begin to change. And somebody has to take the first step forward. And so even from all our field staff, 50% continue to be women, even in the most conservative areas. So I think what we learned from this entire process was cascading and measuring these parameters, and then continuing to have annual goals to achieve them. But a lot goes behind maintaining gender equity. So if you're curious to know about that, I'm happy to talk about that too. Absolutely. I mean, it's work in progress. So, for example, what we realized, we would hire women, and then when their life cycle changes would happen, by which I mean these would be young women in their initial careers, they would get married, and then they would have children and they would leave. So what started happening was my managers would say to us, we don't want to hire women because they leave. I mean, we invest in them and they leave. So I said, well, let's turn around this argument and see where the problem lies. And we discovered 2 or 3 things. One was the mindset, which we keep coming back to, because patriarchy is very insidious. It's very hard to break the code, but one has to keep trying. So the mindset was that the young women were getting married, and their in-laws didn't like the idea of having a daughter-in-law who worked, because maybe they had impressions that women in offices are being harassed and they're open to all kinds of issues at the workplace. So we said, all right, if that is the first step in terms of advocating and educating the incoming family, let's invite them for tea. So we have a program which we call Not Without My Mother-in-Law. What that means is that the moment one of our young staff gets married, we are married or engaged, we invite them, the in-laws, to the office, and we say, come and sit with us, have a cup of tea, try and engage with us and see how secure your future daughter-in-law is going to be in this environment. That buy-in is important. So we saw that as step number 1. Then we realized that women don't have care. You know, when they're having children, they don't have the daycare facilities available. So what we did is we opened up daycare facilities across our network. So currently in our 500 branches, 300 have daycare facilities. So what happened was the attrition post their first child or their children started going down. So we introduced that. Then we realized another thing was happening, which was mobility. So we don't realize this, but getting onto public transport, traveling for an hour, being harassed while you're traveling on the public transport as a woman is a tough call. I mean, I salute the women in Pakistan who get up every morning, take the public transport and come to work. So we started looking at the issue of mobility and how we could make it easier for the women to come to office. So we were the first ones to introduce a scooter program. We provide interest-free loans to our staff. There are now almost 350 young women in the KASHF staff that sit on motorbikes and come to work every morning. Now, this is a change. This is a transformational change. You didn't see that 5 years ago. You wouldn't see women on the roads on motorbikes in Pakistan. But suddenly this is becoming quite normalized now. So again, you have to keep looking at the challenges that the female staff face. Then the fourth thing, which is very interesting, there are hidden barriers or constraints that are not apparent. For example, if you look at pay and wage and returns and salaries, a lot of times we began to see that even female managers were not assessing their female staff members who were team members as at the same level as they were doing their male staff members. So we started educating managers on how to assess female versus male staff members. So there was a lot of perception rather than reality factors that were impacting their decisions. So we also educate people on how to run annual performance reviews that are gender blind. This is very important as well. So a lot of these things, and then trainings, were another also important part of this on gender. So every 6 months, across the board, we talk about the mission, the vision, the core values, the code of ethics, the policy of sexual harassment, across the board to men and women in our organization so that it remains fresh. Then another thing started happening. I mean, these are things that you learn. Social media came in. WhatsApp for office came in. But people didn't know how to use it. They didn't know what the norms were. If a man is sending, if a male staff is sending a female staff a message at 11 o'clock at night, that's not appropriate. So we had to educate them on how to use social media for work as well. So these are things you learn when men and women are working together. And these are important. These may seem very small to you in the context of a Western society, but in the context of a more conservative society, these are etiquettes and ethics that have to be articulated and shared. So, this is how we then address gender relations in the organization as well. Yes, I think definitely, because climate risk is huge. It's looming, it's here. And I think from a technical assistance perspective, climate risk affects women. And it affects them really badly, but they don't have the voice or the control or the choice to influence this. So I think there's a lot of work we can do together, especially all the funds that look at gender now need to start thinking of how are we going to address this issue. As a microfinance provider, the same responsibility lies on our shoulders. And I think this would be an area that we all need to put our heads together. It's not just about putting money in this. It's about coming up with innovative strategies to address that. So we all, whether it's climate scientists, whether it's economists, whether it's investors, whether it's providers or practitioners, we all need to sit down and have this conversation on how we're going to address this. My country is one of the 5th most vulnerable countries to climate risk. Some issues we may have created ourselves, but on the broader climate risks, many of these are exogenous to us. So since women face the brunt of this, we just recently had floods. We had floods in 2022. What they're saying is this is going to become the norm. So we really have a responsibility to those millions of women who don't have a voice or a choice in facing this risk to address it. The poverty is one issue, health is another. All of these are issues, but now add to it the issue of environmental degradation and climate risk. Then it amplifies the issue even more. I think my first thing would be to have an aligned mission and vision, be very clear on why you're doing what you're doing. It's also important, as I mentioned earlier also, when we're talking about gender, it's just not about the transaction. It's about the transformation as well. So bring them together. What is it that you want to achieve at the end of the day? Look at your metrics, be very clear on that. Don't treat this as as I was saying, it's not something to make you feel good. It's something to actually be scalable and sustainable. So it has to have that impetus as well. And fourth, I think there's a lot of knowledge out there that you can learn from. I can tell you, KASHF wouldn't be here if we hadn't stood on the shoulders of all those giants who have opened the space for us. So whether it was the Grameen's or the BRACs or the Sevas or the Pro Mujeres or FIE, what have you, we learn from the best. And the same goes for us. We're happy to share knowledge. And this is everyone's problem. Unless we achieve gender equity in the world, the human race can't prosper. That's our commitment.
Thank you.